Their grievance is intended to make you feel guilty, right? And the more guilty you feel, the more ground you give up. The more ground you give up, the less you trust. These people are manipulating us into taking resources that they haven't earned. And so it just, by nature of that activity, it just erodes our trust in each other as human beings.
Welcome to the OpEdge, the Gazette's opinion podcast, where we bring you cutting-edge perspectives from Colorado's top newsmakers, columnists, and more. I'm Jimmy Sengenberger, investigative columnist and your host for the program. Michael A. Hancock is a man with an extensive resume. He's a writer, columnist for the Denver Gazette, software engineer, business executive, musician, and civic commentator hailing from Aurora, who also runs his own Substack. He's the author of the new book, Rules for Restoration, a counter manifesto to radicalism, which I just so happen to have with me right here. Mike Hancock, welcome to the OpEdge.
Thanks a lot, Jimmy. I'm so happy to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
I appreciate it, especially because there are so many lessons I think that you bring into this book that apply locally into things that are happening in Colorado and in our communities, even more locally than that. So let's start here. What is Rules for Restoration, and what exactly is it that we are restoring?
Rules for Restoration is a counter manifesto to radicalism. It's a book about how to rebuild moral confidence, civic order, and liberty in a culture that has been taught to tear down more than to build. And that's one of the things that I continue to see, is that you go and you talk to kids and you ask them how they're going to get involved civically, and the first thing out of their mouths is they're going to protest it. And so I wrote it because people know something is wrong, but they need a clear framework for how to respond. And so I think my book does that. What is it that we're restoring? Well, it isn't about nostalgia at all. It's about returning to first principles, to ideas like the truth matters, God gave us our rights, and our government should be here to actually protect those rights and uphold those rights, including our right to have property. That's extremely important, because if you have property, whether that's your mind, the ideas that you have, the things that are physical, you can use those to create value for yourself and your community. So it's really about returning to first principles.
Do you think, just as an aside, that there is enough civic understanding in the United States and here in Colorado for that restoration to be possible, or do we need sort of a renaissance in education to make it plausible?
Jimmy, that's an excellent question. When I grew up, I graduated from high school in 1972, and in the 11th and 12th grades, I took a course in civics. So that's where I first began to learn about the three co-equal branches of government. That's where I first learned about the Bolshevik Revolution and the impact that progressive ideas have on societies. And I absolutely believe that that's missing today. Kids don't know what the heck is going on in terms of government and how government functions. They don't know what their responsibilities are as a citizen to hold the people that they elect accountable for getting the things done that we really need to get done. So absolutely, we do need a renaissance in education. Education plays a key role in that restoration process.
Now, when you talk about, in the subtitle of your book, Rules for Restoration, a counter manifesto to radicalism, clearly you're playing a little bit off of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals from the early 1970s. But when you talk about radicalism, what is it that you're specifically getting at and trying to provide a counter to?
Well, yeah, when I think about it and I look at it, there's a ton of things out there that educate people on how to destroy our nation. I think Saul Alinsky's book, Rules for Radical, is a great example of that. But there's very little that tells people how to recapture what has been lost. There's very little out there that gives people any guidance as to how to engage other than to be more radical than what Saul Alinsky suggested. So my book is really about building, where radicalism is about tearing things down. If you and I both reflect on the notion of, gee, where in our history has radicalism ever created anything of real substance? Well, about the only place that you can look to, in my opinion, is the American Revolution, right? We're going on now 250 years in this great nation, and a lot has been done to tear things down. But my book is oriented around helping people to understand what they can do on a day to day basis locally to, one, understand what's happening, and two, to actually participate civically to make things better.
Yeah, and that point about local, I think, cannot be understated. But let's examine that a little more closely, particularly in the context of your home city, Aurora, where we've had a massive flip in the Aurora City Council. You write about it frequently in your columns for the Gazette. And when you see what was achieved for the previous handful of years, where there were different policy positions that were taken that are now being undone, how does that sort of fit into the ethos or the premise of the book?
Well, yeah, Jimmy, what's going on right now in Aurora, Colorado, in terms of the city council is pretty sad. I mean, this, as you know, city councils are supposed to do things like take care of the streets, make sure that the streets are clean, make sure that it's attractive to businesses coming in that can create valuable jobs for us to have. It's supposed to take care of making sure that everybody is safe and that sort of thing. But what we have elected to Aurora City Council are a group of people who seem to thrive on virtue signaling. And I'll give you a quick example. There's a new resolution that's going to be offered up this coming Monday, where they are making a resolution that fundamentally says that if a Aurora Police Department police officer, for whatever reasons, justified or not, kills someone, that the city will mourn the death of that person, which is rather absurd if you think about it. The job of the city is not to mourn; it's to actually make sure that things are applied in a judicial way. So justice is front and center when it comes to that sort of stuff. And then we have people that come, and they've been coming for over, geez, a year or more, and they protest. And they protest because of a police involved shooting where a gentleman got killed. And they protest and complain. And although the city council can't do anything, they're there disrupting things every other week when the city council gathers.
So, when it comes to your concern in Aurora about this resolution saying we'll mourn anyone killed in a police shooting, even if it is justified or found to be justified after an investigation, what is your particular concern there? Is it that the eye is off the ball? Is it that it could stoke more animosity and tensions that cause problems like you're talking about in terms of the protests that could make the job of the police more difficult in an already difficult situation? What's your main concern
Yeah,
there?
my big concern is that the resolution distorts reality and the truth. The fact of the matter is that we shouldn't be. It's not the job, one, of the city to mourn people. Two, it portrays policemen as being always the bad guy, right? They're always the bad guy, which then destroys the confidence and the morale of the police department itself. It destroys morale in the city because people that aren't real positive about going out and solving crimes and stopping crimes, it will ultimately end up resulting in more crime occurring. So it's going to demoralize the entire city. My point is that these people, with their virtue signaling, always do things to diminish the value of the role of our government and distort the way that our citizens, especially the kids, see things.
In your book, you have a chapter entitled The Inversion of Virtue, and you specifically put a distinction between virtue signaling and virtue itself.
Yes.
Especially in fitting in with what you were just talking about, how is that different when you're actually, what is virtue and what is virtue signaling? What's the distinction?
Virtue signaling fundamentally is when somebody takes the time to formulate words that that are supposed to mean, oh, that they're meaning to be compassionate and good, and when what they're doing is quite the opposite. I mean, and this is the thing, is what they're doing is really demeaning people with their ideas, slowing down the process of making our city to be as great as it really could be. But it's virtue and virtue signaling are two different things. Virtue is like standing for things like truth, right? Standing for being honest, okay? Having courage, those sorts of things. Virtue signaling is just waving your hands and pretending to be good when you're really doing bad.
What about those who would say, I'm an activist, or they might be a radical, and I actually believe in what I'm saying and doing? This isn't virtue signaling. This is me actually accentuating my viewpoints and my concerns and fighting for change.
Well, Jimmy, people believe in all sorts of silly things, right? The question is, does what you stand for make sense for even yourself and the community? And what these people are doing, quite frankly, here in Aurora, Colorado, they're on a mission to diminish the value of our police, and everything from I'm on the public safety budget committee, right? And I'm sitting there with people who basically want to reallocate resources in the police department, which we all know means they want to defund police activity. And this is when what we're experiencing in Aurora is a dramatic drop in crime. The police chief, the new police chief, and the team is doing a great job. Crime is down 25%. Gun violence is down 45%. Yet these people have in their mind that there should be less police on the street.
This ties in with another chapter, and I've heard this expression used, but you really lay it out well, I think, in your book. The gospel of grievance, and how there's sort of a satisfaction in grievance or in victimhood that people can get that can often underlie what is being done in a political movement, like some of those things that you're talking about. Let's discuss a little bit. What is the gospel of grievance, and how do they find some sort of strength or power in victimhood?
Over time, I think what we've seen in our nation, people find complaining, holding grievances as a way of twisting the arms of those people that actually are interested in making things better. And so it's the whole idea is to make you and I feel guilty because of some past wrong. And it could go all the way back to slavery for some people, right? It's like, oh, black people were slaves, so gee, you owe us something, right? And at the end of the day, it always seems to be the grievance is always attached to some amount of money that these people, it's like they're going to whine and whine until you give them money. And even when you give them money, then they just find more to whine about. So it's a never ending thing. And I think that we first started to see some of this stuff probably during the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Grievance was a really big thing there. I think within the black community, what you saw during the 50s and 60s, I mean, the church was a fundamental tower of strength for blacks in America. You saw us overcoming all kinds of obstacles, whether it was literacy or businesses or all sorts of things. But when the 60s came around, all of a sudden it was all about grievance, right? And the government owing us something, owing people's, and that has spread throughout our society. More people grieve today than ever before, and it's sad to see, and it's quite frustrating for a person like me who, I went to school and I got my education, and I worked my butt off, and I overcome obstacles. I am not a person, and neither should anybody be someone that just stops if obstacles are put in your way. That's just what happens when you grow up.
You write in the book, grievance politics does not just hijack morality, it erodes public trust. Now, we are at a moment where public trust in our state and across the country is at record lows. I won't say all time, because I'm sure there are other points in history where public trust was even less than now, but you have a confidence of or crisis of confidence right now. How does grievance politics, and explain that maybe a little more, what you mean by grievance politics, but how does that play a role in undermining public trust and confidence?
Well, the thing is that what these people do, their grievance is intended to make you feel guilty, right? And the more guilty you feel, the more ground you give up. And what ends up happening is that the more ground you give up, the less you trust. And what you see happening is that these people are manipulating us into taking resources that they haven't earned. And so it just, by nature of that activity, it just erodes our trust in each other as human beings. And so it seems, I mean, if you take a look at the Democratic Party today and Congress, and if you ever watch any of those sessions where they're the I'm losing my thought right now, but the sessions where Congress get together and they have sessions where they are actually dealing with particular issues or investigations and that sort of thing. What you see,
the committee hearings.
The committee hearings. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yes.
The committee committee hearings are like focal points for grievance, and what you'll find is that progressives will always find some reason to find something wrong with everything, and unfortunately, people fall into that and believe it. And I mean, no kings, right? No kings. We have no kings. Grievance, right? Illegal ICE going out and doing the work that they're doing. Well, we're going to grieve about that, right? They're doing their job, but what we want to do is grieve enough so that they can't do their jobs, or that everybody hates them doing the job that they are legally obligated to do.
Michael Hancock, in your book, you talk a lot about the crisis that we're seeing being moral and cultural, though, and not just political. A lot of what we're talking about is political, but there is that overlap. How do you view what we're seeing in Colorado and across the country as more than just a political problem?
Well, Jimmy, they say politics is downstream from culture. And what progressives have done a really good job with over the years is they have attached themselves and infiltrated all of our institutions. So whether that's the church, government, education, and almost every institution, our corporate America even, you see that they have captured and changed the culture. And eventually, as the culture has changed, certainly politics has flowed along with that. So here in Colorado, we see that when I got to Colorado, it was a great conservative state, beautiful. There weren't people sleeping in the streets. There wasn't marijuana smell everywhere that you go. And what you see today is homelessness, high crime, and you have people elected to office that rather than dealing with those problems, they're doing things to actually support those and extend those and grow the homelessness, grow drug use, grow all sorts of things that just deteriorate our great state.
Why do you think that is? Is it an ideological block? Is it rooted in radicalism somehow? Like, what is it that motivates in this belief that you're expressing or ascribing to them, that these are not negatives but something to be tolerated or allowed for?
Yeah, it's cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism is all about turning a society against itself, to destroy institutions, to make institutions less credible. If you're familiar with Antonio Gramsci came up with the idea that, communism isn't working as an economic philosophy. What we actually need to do is change the culture before we can change the politics and change nations into those that are subservient to the communist manifesto, if you will.
You say, and I think this is sort of related, you say in the book and have a chapter, restoration is resistance. Going back to what we're restoring from earlier in our conversation, how is that resistance in the year 2026?
Restoration is resistance. If people are tearing things down, then if you restore it, it's resistance. I mean, we have to reclaim our first principles. We have to come from a place where truth actually matters. We have to understand that it's okay to be courageous. It's not racist. um, uh, that's the thing that I think we have to focus on, is just standing for our first principles and being about truth. And
Is it sort of that, in your view, Mike, we've gone so far astray from the founding principles of the country that bringing them back is resistance against the modern sort of view that we've increasingly taken on how our politics is conducted, how our government handles things, and so forth?
Oh, you're absolutely right. Going back to my point about cultural Marxism, what cultural Marxism fundamentally did is said that our founding fathers were white supremacists, right? So, in essence, why would anybody read anything like a Constitution or a Declaration of Independence that white supremacists created? But of course, you and I know that's a fallacy. That's a fallacy, and that's the way cultural Marxism works. It tells lies, and I meet people every day, and I'll ask them, "Well, do you know? Have you ever studied the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution?" And I'd say 99 out of 100 people that I might ask that question say, well, they don't know. And then some say, well, why would I ever do that? That was just written by a bunch of old white men. And we both know they were fairly young, first of all. And they were absolutely brilliant, right? And what they did and what they created was based upon thousands of years of liberal thinking and trial and error in forming government. So what they did was created a nation or a union that was really designed to create something that was more perfect, something intended to always be improving. But as of late, probably for the last 80 or 90 years, the progressives have consistently taken the route of tearing down everything that's good in this nation, and they've sold it to our kids through our education system.
I always remind people that in 1852, before slavery was ended, Frederick Douglass gave a powerful speech, What to the Slave is the Fourth of July,
Yeah.
in which he called the principles of the Declaration saving principles, urged his audience to hold true to those principles, and said that the Constitution was a, in all caps, glorious liberty document.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that there's a lesson there. Speak to that.
When I look back, it wasn't until probably about 5 years ago when I really started to dig into Frederick Douglass, right? Somebody who grew up as he started his life out as a slave, right? Unlike Karl Marx, who was born in the same year, he was born into an elite family. And if you take and contrast the lives of those two individuals, one started out as a slave, one started out elite. Karl Marx ultimately ended up broke, his family totally in shambles, while Frederick Douglass ended up what we would call now a multimillionaire, right? Because he believed in those founding principles. And I tell you, man, the more that I study the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, the more confident I become in our ability to restore this nation to something that it was really intended to be.
Now, your book really drives home a central thesis in part that is about acting locally. And I think building on the principles discussion that we're having, sort of underlying our whole interview, when you're talking about acting locally, what do you mean by that? And how can ordinary people get involved in restoring, as you say, restoring the country, and I would say restoring the state of Colorado?
Absolutely. I think, for my wife and I, several years ago, we decided that we were going to get more politically engaged, and we were just going to start out as precinct leaders or poll watchers or something like that. The next thing I know, my wife's running for the House, District 41 here in Colorado. While she didn't win that election, she actually ran the next year for city council and got elected. And now she's on the city council and loves serving the people. So something like that is what people can do. Get involved in your local party. Get behind ballot initiatives. I'm leading one right now that is to make sure that the money that the tax revenue that we collect for actually repairing roads gets used to actually repair roads, because our state government hasn't been actually properly overseeing that money and using it in ways. So that's why we've got potholes all over the place. Get on boards and commissions within your city. That's another thing. Volunteer at your local elementary school, junior high schools, high schools. There's all sorts of things that we can do. For far too long, simply gone to work and said that, okay, those people that we hired to do these things are taking care of it, and you don't look. But what has happened is progressives have actually got people on city councils, on boards, in all of these places, and they're making the bad decisions that are driving people to be somewhat disgusted and discouraged in the state of Colorado.
Then is it a good thing then, especially with so many loud voices on what you would call the radical side, to show up at city council meetings or school board meetings and to participate in public comment, offering a different perspective?
Oh, absolutely. Write letters, show up at city council meetings. Right now at the Aurora City Council, you have lots of those radical types showing up, and you have 2 or 3 people that, let's say, are more reasonable to show up. And one of the reasons that the reasonable people aren't showing up is that the radicals show up and they're actually threatening the city council, threatening the people sitting in the audience that might be reasonable and getting up to speak. So it's absolutely critical that we do all of those things if we are to, and if we will, save this great state of Colorado.
If there's any one thing that you hope readers will most take away from your book, Rules for Restoration, Mike Hancock, what would that be?
I think the one thing that I think, and I really hope people take away, is exactly that: hope. Hope. Not just hope, but hope, and begin to get active. Understand that you have the responsibility for making this state be the best that it can be, and that you cannot just leave it in the hands of others to do it. So know that it can be done. Know that with people like you, Jimmy, me, and others that we're working on that now, it will be done and it can be done.
Now, just a couple minutes left with you, Mike Hancock. When we talk about what's happening in Aurora, and you really focus a lot of your writings on Aurora in that respect, is that emblematic of something bigger that's happening in our state in terms of the leftward turn in your view, or is this more Aurora specific?
No, it's not Aurora specific. I mean, if you take a look at Aurora, we just elected four what I would call progressives to the city council, and they took a majority. If you take a look at Centennial, it went from being a very balanced city council to now it's got two conservative people on that council, and that's happening all over the state. Interesting thing actually is this too. It's not just limited to, let's say, the Democratic Party. I think you have progressives that exist in the Republican Party as well, and there's a lot of tension and disruption going on across the board. And so I think one of the things that we've got to really do is find a way, whether it's in Aurora or Arapahoe County or within the state, start to reach out to those sensible people across the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and most specifically the ever and fastly growing unaffiliated group of people that are out there.
Is there grievance on the right?
Oh my God, yes. That's I think quite often I find that on the right, they're trying to outdo the grievance on the left, right? And it's all about grievance. And, between you and I just went down to the state assembly, Republican state assembly. And while I met some absolutely phenomenal people at that assembly, there were quite a few people there that were there just to complain and grieve and disrupt, and it's sad to see that. In fact, and I might leave you with this, is that as I was walking out the door, there was a young lady that walked up to me, and she said she had known Stephanie and I from Stephanie's first race, and she said this was her very first assembly. And she just expressed that, gee, if it's like this, I'm not sure what I'm even doing here, and I can't do that. I encourage her to stay involved, and I'm going to follow up and speak with her later. But what they're doing is discouraging people from actually participating, and that apathy ultimately over time creates a lower voter turnout, and the lower the voter turnout means the easier it is for those radicals to actually organize and win.
The book is Rules for Restoration, a counter manifesto to radicalism. Its author, Gazette columnist Michael A. Hancock. Mike, thanks for joining us on the OpEdge.
Jimmy, thank you for having me, and hopefully this is just the first of many conversations to come.
Thanks for tuning in to the OpEdge. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please drop us a like, subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, and be sure to share it with your friends and colleagues. For the Gazette, I'm Jimmy Sengenberger.